My fiancée called me selfish for asking for a prenup. Her daughter said I owed them stability. I called off the wedding and dodged a bullet. Hello Reddit I+ here. This is going to be long, but I really need to get this out. I've been holding it in for months and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what happened. I 38M was engaged to a woman named Melissa 36F. We had been together for a little over 2 years, and she had a 15-year-old daughter, Harper, from a previous relationship. When I met Melissa, I really thought I'd found someone who got me. I'd had a rough go with relationships in my 20s and early 30s, but with her, everything felt grounded, easy. I fell for her pretty quickly, and I also grew to care about Harper. I never wanted kids of my own, but I took to her better than I expected. By the time we got engaged, Harper had even started calling me Dad at home, which caught me off guard. Melissa said it was a sign of how safe she felt with me, how much of a father figure I'd become. I was honored, honestly, but something about it also felt like pressure I hadn't signed up for. Not yet, anyway. Anyway, on to the core of it all. I've worked hard my entire life to build what I have. I run a small construction company that I started myself 11 years ago. It's finally doing well. Comfortable, not rich. I also bought a house about 7 years ago, paid off most of the mortgage, and I've got some retirement savings and investments. Nothing extravagant, but it took me blood, sweat, and debt to get here. My last serious relationship ended in a financial mess, and I swore I'd never be that vulnerable again without protection. So, about 3 months after the engagement, we started talking about the wedding, combining finances and long-term planning. That's when I brought up the idea of a prenup. I said I wanted us both to feel secure, and that it wasn't about love or mistrust. It was just smart. She didn't take it well. Melissa's face twisted like I'd slapped her. A prenup? She said. Why, so you can bail whenever you feel like it? I tried to explain it wasn't about that. That it was about protecting both of us. That if things went south, which I hoped they never would, we'd have a plan in place. I told her I'd cover legal costs for her to get her own lawyer to review it. I wasn't trying to screw her over. I just didn't want to risk losing the business or the house I'd built before we even met. She said I was selfish. She said if I loved her, I wouldn't be preparing for the marriage to fail. I said, it's the opposite. I love her enough to want to be sure we're both protected and transparent from the start. We went in circles. She eventually left the room crying and didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. The next day, Harper sat me down. Yes, her teenage daughter got involved. She said, word for word, you're the only stable thing we've ever had. You wanting a prenup makes me feel like you're planning your escape route. If you really loved us, you wouldn't do that. United States. I was stunned. I didn't even know how to respond. I never adopted Harper, never promised Melissa I'd take on a parental role legally or financially, but somehow it had become an unspoken assumption. I started realizing that over time, I had stopped being Melissa's partner and started becoming their safety net. Still, I told myself I was overthinking, that emotions were just high, that maybe Melissa just needed time to come around. So I let it go, temporarily. But something started to feel off. She became distant. Not cold exactly, but different. Then she'd flip and be overly affectionate. Like she was trying to control the temperature in the room, depending on how close I was to backing off the prenup idea. So, I decided to quietly meet with a lawyer anyway, just to understand what I'd be risking if we didn't have one. Long story short, if we got married without a prenup and divorced later, she could be entitled to a share of my business, retirement, even my house. If I died, she could contest my will and potentially leave nothing for my nieces and nephews, who I'm close to and want to support if I ever pass. So I started the process. Still didn't push it with her, just got the documents drafted and was planning to gently bring it up again once we had less tension. Then, one night, I came home and heard her talking on the phone in our bedroom. Door cracked open. She didn't hear me come in. She said, "No, he hasn't signed anything yet. Yeah, I'm trying. I just need a couple more weeks. Once it's legal, we're set." I stopped breathing. She kept talking, but I couldn't listen. Once it's legal, we're set. That phrase kept replaying in my head like a warning bell. Later that night I started digging. I didn't want to, but I had to. Something in my gut was screaming that this wasn't about love anymore. Checked our shared iPad. She was still logged into her email. That's when I found them. Emails between her and someone named Jason. She had him saved under Cousin Jason, which made sense because she'd mentioned a cousin with that name before. But this was not family. These were flirty, personal emails, and in one she wrote, "I've got him almost there. Once the wedding happens, we're good. I know it took longer than we hoped, but it'll all be worth it." Another one. "He's being difficult about the prenup. Might need to cave temporarily to keep things on track. I felt like the floor dropped out under me. I just sat there staring at the screen for what felt like an hour. She was playing me. I printed out the emails, canceled the venue the next day, then the caterer, then the DJ. I stopped payments on everything I could. That weekend, I told her the wedding was off. At first, she laughed, thought I was bluffing. Then I handed her the printed emails. She went pale, then red, then started yelling, accusing me of spying, of violating her privacy. No apology, no denial. Just, you had no right to go through my stuff. I just stood there in silence, let her dig her hole. She eventually left and stayed with a friend. Harper didn't say anything to me, just left a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. You didn't just leave her. You left me too. I cried reading that. I really did care about her. But this wasn't my mess. I wasn't their insurance policy. I wasn't a replacement dad on demand. And I definitely wasn't a free ride to a better life. Melissa moved out the next month. We haven't spoken since, and I honestly hope I never have to see her again. She tried to text me a few weeks later to say I misunderstood everything. But I didn't answer. There was no misunderstanding. She was trying to manipulate her way into financial security, and she got caught. It's been 5 months. I'm back in therapy, back at work. I'm not dating again yet, but I'm starting to feel whole again. I guess the biggest takeaway is this. When someone tells you that you're their stability, but bristles at the idea of a fair, protective prenup, pay attention. That's not love. That's dependency. And sometimes, dependency has an agenda. I dodged a bullet, but it grazed me on the way out. A couple months after everything went down, I was still dealing with the emotional wreckage. Therapy helped. But there were days I felt numb. I wasn't just grieving the loss of the relationship. I was grieving the illusion of what I thought I had, what I almost signed up for. The reality of being used, of being targeted, still felt surreal. I kept wondering, was it always fake? Or did it start real and rot somewhere along the way? Then, out of nowhere, I got a message on Facebook from someone I didn't recognize, a guy named Daniel. His profile pic showed him with Harper. Turns out, he was her biological father. That opened a whole new door I wasn't ready for. He said he knew it was random, but he'd heard about the canceled wedding from Harper. Apparently, she was mad and venting on her socials. He told me he had a few things to get off his chest, and I didn't owe him a response, but he wanted to thank me for looking after his daughter when he couldn't. That threw me. So I messaged back and asked if he had time to talk. We spoke on the phone for over an hour. What he told me confirmed everything I had suspected. And more. He and Melissa had split when Harper was 2. He admitted he hadn't been the best dad, mostly due to addiction issues in his 20s. He'd gone to rehab, cleaned up, and had been trying to get back into Harper's life for the last couple of years, but Melissa actively blocked him at every turn. She didn't want me involved, he said. But not because I was a danger. She wanted to keep control of the narrative, the single mom image, like it gave her leverage. He said Melissa had a pattern. Get into relationships with stable men, move in fast, and let them take on financial responsibilities. He told me I wasn't the first guy she'd moved Harper in with, and I likely wouldn't be the last. What really floored me, though, was this. Jason, the guy she'd been emailing, the one I thought she was cheating with, he wasn't a stranger. He was Melissa's ex from before me. Not a fling, not a cousin. A former live-in boyfriend she used to call unstable and emotionally abusive. Daniel said Harper once told him that Jason used to live with us, but Mom said he couldn't keep a job. So why was she emailing him about locking down the marriage? Was it financial? Some kind of sick codependence? Was she stringing Jason along while planning to marry me for the security? Was he in on it? Or was she conning him too? I'll probably never know. But it made one thing painfully clear. This was never about love. It was about comfort, about appearances, about what I could provide. And Harper? As much as it broke me to think of her as collateral, I realized I had become part of Melissa's image, the nice man who saved them. And when I asked for a prenup, when I showed signs of boundaries, the illusion cracked. That's why Harper lashed out, because the security blanket she'd been promised was being yanked away. I've thought about reaching out to her, telling her I still care, that I never meant to hurt her, but I know that wouldn't help anyone. She's a kid wrapped in adult games she didn't create, and that's something she'll have to figure out in time. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I sleep easier now. I'm not paranoid anymore. I don't second-guess myself when I lock my front door or sit in silence at dinner. I no longer have to feel like my home is an audition for someone else's dream life. Melissa taught me one final lesson. Whether she meant to or not, Love without respect is manipulation. And trust without protection is a con waiting to happen. If you're reading this and thinking about getting married, get the prenup. Don't let guilt or pressure talk you out of it. If they're really with you for you, a fair prenup shouldn't scare them. I might have dodged a bullet, but I also walked through the fire and made it out with my soul intact.